Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this podcast. And we have been discussing Amazon sellers journey. And today I have a very special guest. Everyone dream of exiting from Amazon and making a lot of money. And people think this is going to be an easy path. We will come on Amazon, we will sell a lot of products, and then we will make a quick exit and make a lot of money out of it. So there's this perception of flipping a brand and how to flip a brand. And we have a very special guest with me who has been specializing in flipping those brands and helping all those sellers to flip their brands. They also give the advisory and they also give the consultation to all those successful brands on Amazon that how they would be able to exit and how they would be able to make money out of it by selling or exiting from their brand. So with me is David Davies from FBA Flip. Hi David, how are you?
Daniel, pleasure to be here, man. How are you?
It's good, 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 man. And I'm guessing this is your first podcast, right?
This is the first podcast for me. I'm excited.
Sounds good, sounds good. So, can you tell me about your journey? Like, how did you start it, and how do you ended up in e-commerce space?
No, absolutely. My co-founder is actually my high school best friend as well. So lucky me.
Mm-hmm.
But we started, I want to say, in e-commerce maybe 11 years ago. We did a lot of Shopify direct to consumer. I want to say for the first 6 to 7 years, and then I want to say we transitioned somewhere into Amazon around 2018, 2019. I don't know,
Okay.
just for the audience, everyone knows how much e-commerce evolves, just year by year. I want to say, like in the late, 20 teens, where
Mm-hmm.
Amazon was and where Shopify was, Amazon had far outweighed, just kind of the formalization of that platform as opposed to
Yeah.
direct to consumer e-commerce. I think, what we decided to do was just the Amazon was more consistent. So we ended up, kind of diving into Amazon at a really peculiar time in which we didn't know then was,
Mm-hmm.
COVID was, around the corner. So we get into Amazon, I want to say around 2018, 2019. And then, very next year, COVID comes on and that
Yeah.
changes just the ecosystem all over again. I think what we ended up realizing is just kind of during the COVID level peak, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
institutional capital, start to flow into the space. A lot of these aggregators start to pop up. And then what we start to realize is that Amazon FBA businesses are starting to be looked at more like an emerging asset class than, just a commodity, like what they've been looked at in years past. Flipping Amazon accounts, flipping Amazon businesses is a tale as old as Amazon. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality of it is, I want to say, since 2020, I think it's become a lot more formalized since institutional
Yeah.
capital. And a lot of these firms now exist, to exclusively do that. So, that all being said, we just kind of, like couple, our e-commerce operation experience. We, started, connect some dots, more so in the traditional, M&A legal world. And we started, to create FBA Flip because we realized that a lot of sellers, they want to look at exiting, but they just don't have, like the pieces and parts in place to be able to kind of
Yeah.
facilitate that process. So hence FBA Flip was born.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, you are founder of FBA Flip. You co-founded with your friends. So, can you walk us through the early days of this company? It must have been difficult when setting up this platform when no one else is doing this. You have been into e-commerce, and there's no such platform. Like we have seen a couple of platforms, but you have made a unique platform for yourself, and then you had to devise it and share with the Amazon audience that was in the space. So, what was the difficulty and what early days felt like, when setting this up?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to say I want to say the first and second pillars that are really foundational for us in starting FBA Flip was really transparency and
Hmm.
honesty. I think a
Good.
lot of brokers, like what ended up happening kind of 2020, 2021, what ended up happening is you have, two parties. There's an acquisition frenzy going on. Everyone's trying to acquire these Amazon businesses. Now, at that particular time, we're going head on with a lot of, direct aggregators that are doing their own
Hmm.
direct outreach programs to acquire a lot of these Amazon businesses. There's also a lot of sell side brokers. So, just kind of between those two parties, what we realized is like, okay, what we're going to have to do is do something in terms of providing more value. How can we
Hmm.
provide
Yeah.
more value that actually makes it worthwhile for us to do, for a seller to deal with us, like as opposed to like dealing directly with an aggregator that's reaching out to them, or dealing with more just saying more of an established broker. What we ended up realizing is that if we take a specific approach to just Amazon FBA businesses, we don't dab in Amazon KDP. We don't do Shopify businesses. We
Yeah.
really try to make sure we curated a network that's exclusively focused and driven on Amazon FBA acquisitions. That allows just kind of the close and the due diligence process, and just the entire M&A process to be a lot more streamlined and efficient, because now the people who are acquiring these businesses, this is kind of what they do, like day in and day out. That was one big piece of it. When I talk about kind of honesty, really kind of resetting what the valuation pool looks like. What ended up happening kind of with all the aggregators, a lot of players overpaid for a lot of these Amazon businesses just kind of during the COVID level peak. Because what ended up happening is that a lot of bets were made that how COVID time was going to continue a lot longer than what it really did. So those multiples reflected that at the time. But kind of now, like on the other side of that hill, the world has normalized and a lot of the market is reset. So
Yeah.
when I talk about honesty, how do we get sellers to realize, like, okay, look, if you really want to exit your business, I'm not going to lie to you and say, hey, look, you can get 5x, net profit last year, because that's really it's really deceiving and it's misleading. And
Exactly.
and oftentimes it's just a big time waste, on the sell side, on the buy side, and on the M&A side. So a big thing for us is really, kind of explaining to sellers, this is what you can get. The evaluation that we provide are things that we actually know that we can achieve in the actual market. So I think that's really, kind of pushed us out there in the Amazon space, and we're really grateful for the response.
Interesting. That's some interesting insight. So, coming from a seller perspective, let us suppose I have a brand and I want to exit or maybe flip it. So, what steps are important to evaluate whether I'm a good store or I have like this much capability? I have to go there to achieve this thing and then maybe able to, flip my store. So, how do you evaluate if Amazon store is good enough for the flipping?
Absolutely. So what we do, we really, go through a thorough process. We have a
Uh-huh.
great technology partner in 3fin. 3fin,
Hmm.
provides a lot, e-commerce driven valuations. And what, that's
Hmm.
what allowed us to do is, kind of set a barometer of expectation for our seller. Now,
Hmm.
that coupled with, just our own intimate knowledge of, just what the market and the multiples and what aggregators are truly willing to pay right now. And outside of aggregators, there's, other digital acquirers, private equity firms. But that being said, kind of, like coupling all that together and realizing, okay, if this is what, like the data driven valuations given, but this is what the market is saying, how do we, like kind of, coalesce these things together to realize that this is what we can truly sell this business for? When you get down to, what the valuation of an Amazon business is, it comes off, a few data points. We talk about category, we talk about longevity of the business,
Yeah.
seasonality, how long has the business been operating, the volume of the business, the establishment of the business, what intellectual property is associated with the business, whether that be brand registry, trademarks, exclusive, wholesale relationships. These are all, factors and aspects that play into the ultimate valuation of an Amazon business. So you kind of, like have to evaluate these things, from a just kind of a 30,000, foot view, and really, get to that point of realizing how, the market is going to respond to, that business.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Suppose I have a brand and I have like access to, not only to Amazon but have access to all those other platforms as well. Let us suppose we have Shopify, we have all the expansion of our social media. How does that contribute to flipping an Amazon brand? Do you specifically target the flipping of Amazon store only, or focus on all the brand, that has the access to all those other platform as well?
Yep, no, it's a great question.
Hmm.
For us, like, we definitely deal with Amazon native businesses, but that doesn't have to exclusively mean that they're only selling on Amazon.
Okay.
Businesses, and it's a really good question that you asked this. It's been a growing and evolving thesis that, kind of since, a lot of the aggregators have, kind of declined in a lot of senses, just since what the peak level was during
Yeah.
COVID. I think a lot of people realizing that Amazon FBA business acquisition is really Amazon channel acquisition. When you talk about a true e-commerce business, it's only a business if you have, access to multiple marketplaces and multiple
Exactly.
platforms. I think that has, what definitely evolved and form wise. Just like I said, with more time, with more experience, and more education, the market is, it's ever changing and always evolving. But I think, if you look at, 2024 as opposed to 2021, I think people now realize that a business that is selling on Shopify, selling on, on Amazon, selling on Walmart, selling on TikTok is more
Hmm.
of a business than an Amazon business ever was, because on Amazon
Exactly.
is that it's just that sales channel. So that definitely increased the valuation significantly.
Cool. That's cool. Okay, so I have an Amazon brand, and or maybe I have a lot of money. I'm an aggregator and I'm looking to buy some brand.
Yep.
or maybe I'm supposed to be buying some kind of brand and I see different brands in front of me. So what would be the red flags, when quantifying those brands? Like, suppose I was not a bestseller a month ago, but I have like got a lot of fake reviews into my listing. I have got a lot of spending on my account to make it look like it's a good one. So
Yep.
what would be the red flag to see and this quantify whether this brand is a good one or not good one?
Absolutely. When it comes down to the actual due diligence and assessment of these Amazon
Yeah.
businesses, a lot of these digital acquirers, these PE firms that are specialized in acquiring these Amazon businesses, they do have operators somewhere in there, just kind of in their network that's able to that kind of sort through these things and realize, okay, these are fake reviews, these are authentic reviews, and just like you're saying, like if it comes back that 90% of these reviews are fake, it's obviously going to disqualify them, from the exit opportunity. But now, there's a lot of layers that need to be peeled back anytime like you're buying any business. Things factors come into play as seasonality. Like I want to say businesses that sell more in a certain quarter or a certain season are worth less than a business that has more of a consistent volume all throughout the year. We oftentimes call businesses that are able to sell through at the same rate in every season,
Yeah.
evergreen businesses. Something like shampoo, something like body lotion, something that is going to continuously that consumer has to rinse, wash, repeat the cycle of that, and they use it at the same rate throughout the year. So consumption rate's a big thing. Seasonality, like that's kind of in the same boat as that. Also size. When I talk about valuation multiple, I think what people realize is that it's the same amount of work to run a small Amazon business as it is a large Amazon business. And I think, like I said, these are caveats that have only come through experience and just the post acquisition cycle of the aggregation world. And I think now that has definitely changed a lot of the acquisition criteria for a lot of digital acquirers. The other thing is just kind of category fit. The reality of it is when you get to a certain, like when you get to a certain revenue threshold, it really is not about so much about how you can grow so much more in that particular vertical. Sometimes you have to grow via acquisition. Sometimes you have to grow via cost savings. There's a lot of different avenues that come into play when you get to a certain level. So I say that to say a lot of these aggregators, they kind of have a category fit that they're interested in.
Mhm.
So in their mind, they're trying to be, almost modernized consumer packaged goods companies. So pretty much you say, okay, if Daniel wants to, just dominate, health and beauty category,
Yeah.
maybe it's like, okay, maybe his acquisition criteria is exclusively focused on, shampoo, health and beauty brands. And he's trying to grow in that category by acquiring more of the businesses in a specific category. That all being said, like you will grow and strategize, your post acquisition, like operating procedures more so when you get and gain more knowledge about what it is your category is. A lot of these people have omni-channel, avenues, continue selling these brands. Maybe they'll go, B2B, maybe they'll, start to expand on Shopify or TikTok. But that all comes, just experience of knowing your category and what it is that you can do post acquisition. So there's, it's really different for every acquirer, but I would say, like at foundation, those are probably the reasons.
That's a great answer. Okay, so I'm a seller, and this is my first time I'm going to sell my brand, right?
Yeah.
Other than reaching out to you, what steps should I consider before I should, know that I'm going to sell my brand, or maybe, this is it that I should be looking for someone to sell my brand or flip my brand?
Yep.
What should be the key points that you would say someone should consider before flipping the brand?
Yep. Great question. I always tell people, and kind of your question, like by that point, it seems like you're already ready, to start, looking at the exit process. But I think now that people realize that Amazon businesses can be sold, if you're starting an Amazon business today, I always tell people the best thing to do when exiting is to just start the way you plan on wanting to finish. Now, I know it's difficult, like when you could talk about, I got a Amazon business I've been running since 2015, and now all of a sudden all this stuff is happening. It's like, like you've been running this since 2015 and, maybe a separate way than what you plan to exit it as. Now going forward, if you're starting an Amazon FBA business today, I think it's wise and the savvy to start the way that you ultimately want to finish. And what do I mean by that? Acquirers want to see trailing 24 months of financials, knowing that I need to be keeping up with my landed cost of goods expenditures, knowing I need to, keep my books clean, knowing, I need to have, like quarterly and audited financials, by the time that I actually want to, like be interested in, like trying to go through an M&A process. These are the things to make it so much simpler when you already know upfront what's going to be required of you. I've had a lot of sellers, had to spend a lot of time in the M&A process just preparing on their own side, to even begin, going to market. A lot of time, people have been running these businesses, and you'd be surprised how many people don't, keep track, their
Yeah.
financials. I think that's probably the biggest Achilles heel in the M&A process altogether. The second one I would say is kind of understanding that false expectation creates disappointment in this cycle. See,
Wow.
the issue is people come to the table, they come onto the market, and they think they've seen a Yahoo Finance article that somebody sold their Amazon business for 8 times whatever they made last year, and then when you get into the market, you're getting multiples that are in the range of what Amazon businesses normally trade for. You end up getting disappointed. But that's really
Exactly.
because you had the false expectation coming into the process. Maybe if you were a little bit more, grounded and understanding, okay, look, businesses on my side trade for between 2 to 4x net profit. And when I talk about the northern end of four, getting up to 5x and stuff, every I is dotted and every T is crossed when you start on that end of that range. But just understanding like, okay, this is the range that I should expect. And when you come in thinking you're expecting a 6 to 8 profit multiple, you're going to be gravely disappointed. So I always tell people these are probably the things to think about, like leading up to wanting to ask like
Yeah.
off your business for sale.
Okay, tell me about the Amazon dominance and all those Chinese sellers dominance in every category you see. So how does this impact all those sellers looking to flip those brands, you know?
Dang, I have to say something that a lot of the audience is not going to like to hear, and that's the fact that,
Say it, man.
oh yeah, any product on Amazon has its own product life cycle.
Exactly.
And that's the hard truth to a lot of people. And that's going back to our earlier point about omnichannel diversification. When you're selling on multiple platforms, you have to realize to yourself, if you're a business owner, you have to care more about your business because Amazon cares about their business. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
Amazon is always going to cycle in their algorithm new sellers to make sure they can retain a certain like level of third party seller. And they're going to
Mhm.
continue to cycle through sellers. The buy box is going to feed certain new sellers in the algorithm a certain amount of sales, and older sellers will eventually get phased out and the cycle continues. And people need to realize, okay, I'm launching my private label brand, I'm launching a particular product, and you expect it to have, almost the longevity of what you would expect maybe in a direct to consumer or a brick and mortar business. You have to understand that your business is not rooted in the same foundation of your comparison points. And I think, that is probably, like such a big issue when you talk about, just the Chinese sellers. The Chinese sellers always have, like an upper hand when it comes to, just like cost of good and manufacturing. I think what people need to realize is where Amazon is at now is Amazon is really getting to, the profit driven, aspect of, their own business.
Mhm. Mhm.
For a long time, and a lot of the disappointment comes from sellers that Amazon has truly built its business to the level that it's at today on the backs of these third party resellers that it no longer really wants to deal with.
Yeah.
Amazon wants, like shift and migrate, to a much more of a brand oriented approach. But, you think to yourself, like Amazon became the behemoth that it did to a lot of these third party resellers. But gone are those days. And this is what I talk about in terms, of just understanding like the only thing that's consistent is change and understanding that the best businesses out there are based on at being able to, adapt. That will allow a lot more sellers to be able to be more successful when it comes down, like how do I, like navigate myself through the e-commerce arena.
Cool, cool, cool. I think that's pretty interesting insight to see. And okay, so you have seen the post-COVID era, you have seen the before COVID era, you know. So how do you see the acquisition process in future? Does it evolve, or is it evolving? Is it becoming more difficult, or is it become easing, you know, with respect to time? As you see, the AI has evolved more and more, so you would be able to see more and more insights about any brand that is out there, you know. AI seeing those listings, and just like the helium 10 has a lot of features in it that tells the brand quality, the listing quality, the brand history. So how do you see the acquisition process in future, and how do you see the exit of brand, whether it is going to be easy or difficult?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of want to say one more thing about the
Sure.
Chinese sellers, and then I'll merge that question
Sure,
in.
sure, sure, sure.
But the thing is that a lot of the Chinese sellers, like when you think about the fact that what Chinese sellers are doing is they're either unfortunately reselling counterfeited items, or they're kind of
Mhm.
knocking off the IP because China doesn't have the same intellectual property laws that the United States does. And
Yeah.
I think like what domestic sellers have to realize in the United States is that like when you're playing in a global economy, not everyone is playing by the same rules. And what is wrong to you might be right to someone else because of their foundation of wrong and right. And I think, what people are starting to, gradually realize is that, A lot of this, is to be determined, and we hope, there's determined in a way that's, like more feasible, and amenable towards, the domestic sellers. But the reality of it is right now there's some geopolitical issues, at play that are, allowing Chinese sellers to do what it is that they're doing in the United States market, and not allowing, domestic sellers to do the same. That is an issue larger than the Amazon, frankly. Now we
Mhm.
hope, over time, that a lot of, when you look at, what's going on in the UK and the fair price, laws, that they've, brought to Amazon in the UK. That's something, that Amazon sellers hope, like through the FTC lawsuit in 2026, that Amazon may have to start playing, on a more, even playing field. But right now, you think, okay, in the middle of 2024, that doesn't help me today. So, I say all that to say, and when you're asking about, just how has the acquisition cycle, like been, post COVID, I think people have become more educated as, like a lot of these ins and outs, and, how this space is evolving. When I was telling you about, just the multiples and the valuations, the best way to get a business sold in 2024 is to price it like it's 2024, not in 2021. People
Mhm.
are still
Mhm.
buying these things. But like I said, the people are being disappointed in the acquisition cycle because they're coming to the table with the expectation that things are like how they were, 3 years ago, when there's a lot of, free money going around for acquisition, like it was a different time. Private equity, like a lot of institutional capital was making more of a bet, for society to be in a different way than what it has normalized itself back to. So, that all being said, I think, people need to live in the moment of where we're at today in society and just the whole Amazon ecosystem. I think that, like when you're coming at it in that angle, I think you will be successful. And I've seen a lot of acquisitions still going
Yeah.
on. I also say this. I think that how acquisitions are done is starting to evolve. The reality of it is it may not always be, for the Amazon business itself. One thing I've seen with a lot of aggregators, for example, is that, a lot of people raise a lot of money, to, deploy into, the market, specifically for FBA acquisitions. But I think what people have realized is that they have some operational challenges post acquisition. And I think what people realize that, they have, certain amount of dollars, still in the balance sheet, still, like to be deployed. And then realize like, maybe, I look at acquiring where I'm weak. And this is what I'm saying
Mhm.
had to happen over time, because no one knew this stuff in the first 90, 120 days of all of this, But, now
Yeah.
getting into, year two, heading into year three, you think to yourself, like, okay, if I'm struggling with PPC, maybe instead of, like using, like whatever, money I've raised to deploy into another, Amazon acquisition that I'm going to struggle with, because I now know after buying 5 Amazon businesses that we're not the strongest when it comes to, PPC marketing. Maybe I acquire an Amazon agency. Maybe, if we struggle, like on our logistics side, maybe we acquire a 3PL company. So then, when I talk about where acquisitions have gone, I think acquisitions have actually grown, because I think that like a lot of these acquisitions are starting to, benefit more aspects and more areas of the space instead, just towards the seller economy alone. I think a lot of these acquisitions have started, transiting itself into the service provider economy as well, and that's been beneficial.
I bet you have a lot to say, right? And you have you have to stop because I have to ask you a question. But otherwise, this was your podcast, man.
I warned you from the start.
Everyone talks about the success stories. Does FBA Flip have any kind of unsuccessful or many that any unsuccess that you guys had in this period?
In regards to selling on Amazon, or in regards
Yeah,
to like just
yeah. There was any failure? You guys experienced something, learned something?
oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, if I didn't say before, the other deal killer that we've experienced, unfortunately, twice, in the 11th hour of the M&A process, is seller ego. When I talk about
Oh, yes.
that's something that people don't talk about. I think, like I said, we all like to talk about our closings, and we all have some, closings under our belt and stuff, but
Yeah.
nobody likes to talk about, the deals that die in the 11th hour and how they ended up dying. Unfortunately, there are sellers that come to the table, and go through, a serious due diligence process, and they're still on the fence about actually wanting to exit. I think, when people get LOIs on the table, when they get hard offers on paper, then they start, like they start to change at sometimes, sometimes
Yeah.
people go all the way through, but sometimes, people, they actually, like, I think the reality sets in that this is on paper what my business is worth. we've had people go through our process, on two particular occasions. We, one deal, a little bit over $1 million, and then one much larger, an eight-figure deal. Really, kind of died because a seller, felt as though their business is worth 1 to 2x more than what the market is willing to pay. And
Yeah.
you think to yourself, like, and for people, listening who really understand, just the ins and outs, and how this space is, just from the seller side, on the acquisition side, getting, 3 to 4 to potentially 5x is unheard of right now. And you have to have a business that's pretty much all boxes are checked to even warrant an offer like that. And for someone to, go through a process and not understand, where the market is, it really, has shown us about, just how much more education is needed to the market about where multiples and where valuations are at right now. Because unfortunately, a lot of time has been wasted on some of these deals, and I say that, all encompassing, not just on the M&A side, but on the buy side as well. When you have an aggregator and when you have an acquirer who's really serious about, moving forward with something, for them to, like just get to, an LOI point where they put out, 4x, 4.5x, and somebody really push to get to 5x or to 6x, it really kills a deal because people don't understand. I always tell people that incentives have to be aligned all the way across the board in order for success to come across. And yeah, and that I that's the unfortunate side to, like, a lot of the M&A processes, that sometimes seller ego, does play a piece in this. When people feel like my business is worth this, why can't it get that? And then, and people walk away. So, those are scary stories sometimes.
I appreciate that, man. That's an honest answer, to be honest with you. And we do not have much time left. And otherwise, I would have loved to talk with you. And since you like to speak a lot, we could have gone a lot further. So there are two questions left in this podcast, and the one question is that how people could reach out to you and all the listeners listening to this podcast, like can get to know about your services you offer. Do you have any website or how they could reach out to you?
Absolutely. So if anyone listens, if you want to give us, follow us on our website, www.fbaflip.io. Give me a follow on LinkedIn. I'm sure, like there'll be some links, in the bio and whatnot. But follow me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn actually, because what we've actually
Cool.
ended up realizing is that sometimes we get a lot of confidential listings. I want to say earlier on in FBA Flip, we did a lot more, blasting on the marketplace. But at this point, we've kind of, more so curated a list of acquirers in which we share, kind of pre-vetted opportunities with those clients and whatnot. So if anyone, is interested in FBA acquisition, they want to sign up, through the buyer intake form, or interested in, selling your Amazon business, there's, both the buyer and seller intake form, available on the website. So, definitely, like I said, feel free to reach out to us, connect with me on LinkedIn. I try to, like, bring as much value as I can to the space, and understanding and educating people along the way.
Awesome. One last question. This is going to be an advice for all those people, but I'm not sure if you'd be able to give this advice because you are also 24. So I'm not sure how you're going to give this advice to youngster, but still you came with a lot of experience in your life and a lot of experience with e-commerce. So what advice you would give to all those youngsters looking into Amazon space and all those people who believe in quick rich schemes of Amazon or e-commerce? So what is your advice?
I would tell all the young listeners to get involved early and fail fast. Because when you think to
Awesome.
yourself,
I
by
love it.
24, by 24, 25, a lot of people don't see all the failures that I've had because a lot of them came, when I was a lot younger.
Exactly.
And it's when it's expected to. No one expects, a 16-year-old expects a 17-year-old to be perfect. And I think we beat ourselves we beat ourselves up too much at those ages, when those are the years that are meant for, for trial and tribulation and growth. And that's not to say at 24 you won't be still doing a lot of growing yourself, but I'm saying, during those years, I think you should get in as involved as you can and fail fast, because the longer you stay in certain situations, the longer it takes from the youth of your life, and you're not able to experience a lot of things. When you can, kind of fail and get out, and dust yourself off, you can experience a lot more things, and eventually success will find you.
Exactly, exactly. This was the advice given to me in my last podcast as well. That in your early age, take as much as risk as you can. You have nothing to lose, right? But
Absolutely.
when you're in your 30s, you might have a lot of responsibilities. You might be having a family to take care of. So this is the age to take as much as risk you can, and everything will come with
A-
the way.
Absolutely. Daniel, I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions, in people's life, about just kind of blowing away your 20s and having fun and partying, because the reality of it is, and I'm sure there's a lot of fun, just in being successful,
Oh
just
yeah,
being fulfilled with your work. And I think a lot of people don't realize is that the fact that you if you party away your 20s, it's going to be an uphill battle the rest of the time, because there's
exactly,
always going to be things that you want to do, but the reality of it is, just like you say, when that responsibility enters not into your business but into your life, it just changes the foundation of what you can and cannot do. So you should try and do as much as you can before those things enter into your life and not into your business, because business will always be there. But like I said, sometimes business can't unlock life the way you want it to when life
exactly.
already came for you.
100%, man. And I really appreciate you coming on to this podcast. And I really appreciate you taking time and speaking with me. And this was your first podcast. This was my fourth podcast. So we had a lot of fun. I thank you again. And we will be in touch. And I thank you, everyone who joined on this podcast. And we would like to end it here. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.